Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, gunslice, sharks, peasants, vassals. I'm a useful idiot, and I've talked about Obama's new batch of bootlickers before, but I'm going to go a little more in depth because I did a little more digging, and of course we have a new stooge in the lineup, Jack Lew, as the new nomination for Secretary of the Treasury. So the ones I'm going to talk about today are Chuck Hagel, who is up for Secretary of Defense, Jack Lew, who is up for Secretary of Treasury, and of course John Brennan, who will be the head of the CIA. And I'll discuss exactly what the implications are at the end. But let's go through the rundown. So Jack Lew has been Obama's chief of staff, and he was former budget director for Obama, as well as Bill Clinton. So so much for all those pledges of Obama's to bring in all this new fresh blood and all these new faces for new thinking as he drags out more people from the old Clinton administration. And so then Jack Lew in 2006 was chief operating officer at Citigroup, who Geithner, of course, protected with his life. And Citigroup ended up getting $476 billion in direct bailouts and $2.5 trillion in loans from the Fed. So we're going to have another Secretary of the Treasury who's going to be looking out for Citigroup and all his other buddies in the banking industry. And he also worked in the area of the bank, Citigroup, that made money betting against the real estate market. So he's an inside player and another guy who likes to game the system and then profit off it. So he's a perfect pick for Secretary of the Treasury. And in 2008, actually, he got a Citigroup bonus of $944,000. This is after Citigroup had a $27 billion loss in 2008 and got a $45 billion bailout through TARP. And just like Geithner and all the rest of these economic advisors that have failed strategies and failed policies, he's another Robert Rubin protege. So there's Jack Lew, the new nomination for Obama's new bootlicker to be Treasury Secretary. Then we have Chuck Hagel, and Chuck Hagel turned out to be more interesting than I thought because he's pretty complex. He opposed the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and all for that. And he was actually a veteran who got Purple Hearts in Vietnam, so the first Secretary of Defense who actually worked his way up all the way from being a foot soldier. And he's against the Iran sanctions. He's very critical of our relationship with Israel, and he's for an 80% reduction in our nuclear arsenal. So those are all good things, but turns out he's another insider with the banking industry. Chuck Hagel now currently serves on the advisory board of Corsair Capital, a private equity underwriter. He's on the board of directors for Chevron. He's on the advisory board for Deutsche Bank of America. He's a senior advisor to Gallup, and he's on the board of director for Zurich's Holding Company of America. So that's another example of this post-government bonanza. Someone like Chuck Hagel, a Republican senator, ex-Republican senator, can serve on the boards of 5 different major corporations and reap the salaries from 5 different sources. But what a connection with the banking industry. And Hagel has recently been the director of a company called Wolfensohn and Company. And Wolfensohn worked with Paul Volcker and became president of the World Bank. And upon leaving the World Bank in 2005, he formed Wolfensohn and Company, of which Chuck Hagel is now the director. And this company invests and provides consulting to governments and corporations doing business in emerging markets. So a perfect candidate to be Secretary of Defense because he can make sure that the American military is continued to be used to protect corporate interests overseas, particularly as he's been investing and providing consulting to governments and corporations doing business in emerging markets. Hey, and look at that. Since 2006, he's also done work for Citigroup through Wolfensohn and Company. So we have Jack Lew with his Citigroup connections, and we have Chuck Hagel with his bank connections and his Citigroup connections. And then last but not least, we got John Brennan. And he is another example of complete continuity of policy between Obama and Bush. So he's an old Bush protege, worked in the CIA, and was all on board for all the programs that Obama's expanded. A complete continuity between Republican and Democrat and Bush and Obama on foreign policy. So Brennan, of course, didn't get the head of the CIA when Obama first got elected, and instead became the counterterrorism expert. So for the last 4 years, keep that in mind, for the last 4 years, he has been directing our counter-terrorist efforts with mixed results. And Mr. Brennan was all for retroactive immunity for the telecommunications companies for their surveillance. So he's all for the surveillance and police state. He's all for torture. He's all for our operations in Yemen and Somalia and all through Africa. He's all for the drone culture and the kill list. And he's got some great lies about the bin Laden raid and how there were no civilian casualties in drone strikes in Pakistan. So he's perfect as well. So there we have the new lineup of Obama's bootlickers with a little more detail. And as promised, the big picture is we will see a continuation of the policies of Bush in the Obama administration, just as we have the last 4 years. And these next 4 years will be an expansion of all those policies that we see now. And everybody that he's hired looks to me like a war cabinet. And he's getting ready for great expansion of this international resource war. And these guys are all on board. They're all going to be yes men. And this will consolidate Obama's power in this next 4 years, and pretty much tells our foreign policy will be. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.